Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Off the Dribble. I'm here with my co-host Chris. Chris, say hello to everyone.
What's up?
Okay, today we're going to be talking about this phenomenon in the NBA, which is the increase of the number of smaller backcourts in the NBA. For example, the Utah Jazz, who have the best record in the league, have gotten much productivity out of their backcourt of Conley and Mitchell, both of whom are under 6'2". And you have the Blazers backcourt of Dame and CJ, who've been one of the better backcourts and 1-2 punches over the past several years, and both of them are 6'3". And then you have the Raptors, the Wizards, and Cavs, who have solid backcourts despite Beal and Westbrook being the tallest of those backcourts, and them both being 6'3". It's evident that smaller backcourts did exist in the past, but I'm pretty sure we haven't seen this many prominent smaller backcourts in the NBA at a given time. So my question to you, Chris, is why have we seen such an increase in the number of smaller backcourts, and why are teams embracing this concept more?
To put it simple, man, them niggas could play. If you could hoop, they should be out there. They should be starting. I guess it was really just a stigma around back two small guards can't play defense, and for the most part there is some validity to that. There aren't very many small guards that are good defensively, but as we're seeing, the Utah Jazz have, I think, still the best record in the league, and they have two small guards in their backcourt, so it's clearly not affecting them. It's really more about team defense, and you can have two small guards and still be a good defensive team. And I think teams are starting to realize this, and they're just playing their guys. And I think it's very beneficial for, especially in a lot of situations, if you have a star player that's a guard, if they have another option that they can throw the ball to when there's a lot of eyes focused on them, somebody else that they could give to create a play, and they don't have to make all the plays themselves, it opens up a lot of opportunities. And you see that in Portland a lot. And CJ and Dame benefit a lot off each other, and the same thing happens, like we said, in Toronto with VanVleet and Lowry, the Utah Jazz with Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley. So I think, there's a lot of benefit and upside to having two guards, even if they are undersized, that can both handle the ball and make plays for others and score. And I think teams are starting to realize that.
Yeah, you pretty much took the words right out of my mouth there, so I obviously agree with what you said. But I guess I could talk about these aforementioned backcourts more specifically. For the Utah Jazz, both Conley and Mitchell are both 6'1", and for the Raptors, Fred VanVleet's a generous 6 feet, he's more like 5'11", and Kyle Lowry's 6 foot flat. However, the reasons these backcourts work very well with each other is because those guys are solid to even great defensively, and they're more than competent on the offensive end. These guys are more like the combo guard hybrid, in which they're not designated fully as a point guard or shooting guard, not to mention the fact that these guys are more than capable as play initiators and playmakers in general. And for the Wizards and Blazers also, these backcourts aren't great defensively, but their offensive impact is so overwhelming that it more than negates the flaws that they have on defense. Because of this, I think that more teams will be open to having a smaller backcourt as long as these guys are providing much impact offensively out there. And with this encouragement, I think we're bound to see more of these smaller backcourts in the future, whether that be through pairings in the draft or potential free agency signings.
Yeah. So, do you think this is going to continue to be a trend? Do you think this is going to be a thing moving forward? I think it will. I think we'll start to see a lot more of this, especially on teams that have multiple good guards. Even if they are smaller, they'll start to experiment. It kind of goes along the lines of the whole small ball movement. People were scared to play. Before the Warriors, nobody was playing a 6. I think, what is Draymond listed at 6'5" now? They weren't willing to play a guy like that at center. And people play. The Warriors experimented with it, and it worked out. They were wildly successful with it. It was probably the majority of the reason, their biggest reason for their first championship, for sure. Especially in the lineups where they had Iguodala out there as well. So there's always utility in having players that can make plays for others, and that was a very big part of that. Not only could Draymond and Iguodala play very good defense, but they could also play make for others, and that was a big part of their success. So when you have a lot of players out there, they can all dribble, all pass, and all score when needed, then that's just going to help the team out so much offensively. They can even compensate and more for the lack of defense or defensive breakdowns that they may have because they have smaller players out there. So overall, I still think it's a net positive. But back to my question, do you think this is going to be a trend in the future? Are we going to see more teams like the Cavaliers with smaller backcourts?
To preface the points I'm going to make, I'm not saying that front offices are going to look at the Jazz and set a requirement that only 6'3" guys and under can play in the backcourt. But what I am saying is that teams will definitely be more open to experiment, as you said, with smaller guards at the 1 and 2, as long as they're more than competent offensively and playmaking threats out there as well. A second part of this is that it doesn't make the most sense in the world to force a shooting guard who is a good defender, but is mid offensively, to start over a guard who has diminutive size, but is a flamethrower offensively. An example of this comes to mind in terms of comparing Josh Richardson and CJ McCollum. We obviously know that CJ McCollum's a much better player, but in a traditional team building sense, it would probably suggest that you'd want a competent defender to pair the backcourt with Dame, given that Dame isn't a great defender. However, CJ's just so much better offensively than Josh Richardson that it makes sense for the Blazers to pair Dame and CJ rather than Dame and Richardson because of that overwhelming offensive impact that CJ provides for the team. It would be obviously advantageous to have a 6'5 plus shooting guard who can defend, score, and play make at a very high level to pair with your starting point guard, especially if that guy is 6'3 and under and is deficient in defense. But there's only so many guys like that in the league at any given time, and getting someone like that in the draft proves pretty difficult. And because of this shortage, teams should potentially look at shooting guards who might only be like 6'4, 6'3, and aren't the greatest defensively, but they can provide that offensive firepower that the team might need. But that goes back to what you were saying about teams potentially still being good defensively while having a smaller backcourt out there. In the case of the Cavs, Wizards, and Blazers, all those teams are bottom 10 defenses. However, it's not as simple as saying that these teams suck defensively solely because they have diminutive backcourts. Another cause of this could just be that they don't have a plethora of 3D guys out there, or a rim protector in the mold of like a Rudy Gobert, like a Clint Capella, who can alter shots, or Miles Turner, who can alter shots and have guys thinking twice about entering the lane. So from a front office perspective, you have to look at the personnel on the roster, and before you're making that decision of having a smaller backcourt, and even in an event where a team isn't filled with the most competent defenders, you still take the chance on that backcourt because offense, as important as defense still is, offense is as key as it's ever been in league history. And having those two guards who can just light it up from three, etc., is just so advantageous for the team. You see it for teams like the Portland Trail Blazers, who are 29th or 28th in defense, but they're just so great offensively with Dame and CJ that it keeps them afloat to the number 6 seed in the Western Conference at this point. You could say there could be a cap onto how good a team could be if your backcourt consists of guys who are 6'3 and under, but that also comes down to roster construction. Like, if Masai Ujiri's in charge of your team, possibly you have potentially an additional star or even just 3-and-D guys or rim protectors, things like that, to surround those guys to compensate for their defensive deficiencies and build a competent contender.
I think it will become a trend, especially when it comes to like drafting. Like, a lot of teams go by position. Well, obviously, ideally, you want to get the best player that fits your team. But I think teams are going to start taking who they think is the best player more often, regardless of position. So, like, say for example, if the Hawks had, if the Hawks were able to get Davion Mitchell this year, who's 6'2", and he was the best player available, I think that they would be more open to drafting a guy like that because they see other teams like the Raptors and the Utah Jazz that have been able to find success with that. Even though Trae Young is 6'1" himself and Davion is 6'2", if you go back just 5 years, I don't think any team would even consider that. The whole reason that that Monte Ellis was traded from the Warriors was because they wanted Klay Thompson to play, and they didn't think that a small quote-unquote backcourt of Steph and Monte Ellis would work. And granted, it wasn't working extremely well, but Steph was still a really young player. He hadn't solidified himself and became the player that he is today yet. So obviously that worked out for them. But I'm just, the whole point I was trying to make is the fact that they got rid of that backcourt because they thought it was too small. And this was not too long ago. That was not even 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think that the success of these smaller backcourts could potentially get front offices to be more open in the draft, despite potentially already having a 6'3" or under guy in their backcourt already on the roster. Because the thing for me is, unless you have a franchise cornerstone or like borderline like off all-star or bona fide all-star player at a given position, you should be open-minded in the draft to draft any position. This doesn't just stem to smaller guards in general. I think this just stems to all positions in general. Like, if the T-Wolves get the #1 pick and Cade Cunningham's available, you still take him and you figure it out later with the rest of the guards on the roster. You pair him with the guards that you have, and if he's deemed with a higher ceiling or shows more potential than those guys, you deal the guards that are out of favor and you trade them for a positional need or future draft picks if possible. Like, even if hindsight is 2020, Marvin Bagley shouldn't have been taken at #2 despite him being a talented player. Because even though De'Aaron Fox is a point guard, you could obviously just draft Luka and pair him with De'Aaron Fox in the backcourt, not a replacement for De'Aaron Fox. And if Buddy Hield or whoever falls out of favor for the team, you can trade him for a positional fit or draft picks if possible. So I think that's how teams might operate from now on, seeing the success of these backcourts. And it just, for offices might be more encouraged to draft a player who might be smaller in size in terms of their height and wingspan, but could benefit the team offensively in pairing with the guard that they already have on the team.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point when you talked about them drafting Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic. I'm just tired of the Kings drafting big men. Can the nigga hoop? I don't give a fuck. He could be 7'30". Can he play basketball? Stop drafting niggas because they're tall. Draft people that can hoop, play basketball, put the ball in the bucket.
Yeah, Willie Cauley-Stein and others may have been reaches, but shout out to the Kings for the Tyrese Halliburton pick. That has been a good pickup so far, and I'm a fan of him as well. So,
yeah, I'm tired of that. I'm tired of that. So yeah, hopefully we see more of that in the future, because I'm tired of these big niggas that are ass booty hole getting drafted high as fuck and then being ass. Adam Morrison, Greg Oden.
Well, injuries compromised Greg Oden.
I don't give a fuck.
Well, okay, well said. I think that's it for today's video. And this is just episode 2 of Off the Dribble. Be sure to leave a like on this video so the YouTube algorithm can do wonders for this channel. And don't be shy, feel free to subscribe. Chris, any closing statements?
Peace!
Okay then, check out our respective channels in the description, and yeah, thank you guys for watching. Again, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and stay tuned.